Welcome to Above and Below, the podcast of the Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention. I'm your host, Sonya Bohmann, along with my co-host, Zulq Malik, and we have a very special guest today, Fred Mills. Zulq, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Zulq Malik. Happy to be your co-host, Sonya, as usual. Happy to be here and happy to bring the subject forward and helping change the world slowly and incrementally to get a better place for the construction ecosystem. Welcome, Fred. Can't wait to hear about you.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Glad to have you, Fred. Why don't you go ahead and do a little bit of an introduction? I'm sure you could do it much better than I could.
Sure. So I'm Fred Mills. I'm the founder, face, and voice of the B1M, which is the world's largest and most subscribed to video platform for construction. I also founded the global construction mental health initiative, Get Construction Talking. So I'm very familiar with CISP, have enjoyed helping to elevate and raise money for your fantastic mission. And can't wait to talk about it further.
Well, thank you. We're so excited to have you here with us today. I know we have a lot of things to talk about. I probably have come up with more questions than I normally would from a podcast. So I do want to jump right in. Tell us a little bit more about the B1M and how you've used that platform to share your story, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I'm someone who always loved building things right from a young age. When I was a kid, I loved playing with Lego. I loved building dens in my backyard. I loved building pillow forts in my living room with my siblings. So I guess from quite a young age, I always kind of understood the power of construction to help other things happen. But albeit for me back then in the early days, it was just playing out whatever kind of I was trying to play out in my imagination at that time. But as I grew older, I really got into it. I followed it through school and then through college and then came out and joined the industry, but found that the industry was really misunderstood. My friends and family had seen me kind of go through this really good kind of academic run. And then they were like, "Oh, why have you gone and worked in a dead end industry? Are you just gonna be like laying bricks on site somewhere?" And I was like, "No, I was working for a general contractor, a main contractor, we call them here in the UK. I mean, yeah, we were making huge decisions. We were putting planning documents together. We were designing schools that thousands of kids were going to get their start in. So I wanted to kind of change and challenge that stereotype. But I found there was a lot of very kind of dull engineering press putting out stories about engineering. There was a lot of dull architecture press talking about architecture in very inaccessible terms. So I wanted to kind of put stuff out there that really drew the link between people's lives and what this industry did, showed them the impact that construction has on our world. So started putting some videos on YouTube in my spare time. They were self-made, self-edited, and not very good. Please don't go and watch them. But then gradually we've built a team. I hired my first employee 8 years ago now. We're now, as I said, we have 32 million people watching each month, just under 4 million YouTube subscribers. I employ 16 people across 3 continents. We've won awards. We've traveled the world. I have a book coming out this year. It's good. It's been a really good journey. I think, as we'll come on to, that's the kind of front of house bio bit. Behind the scenes, it's been a lot more difficult than what I've described.
Oh, you know what? Congratulations on all your accomplishments, Fred. But I think a lot of people that are in this industry started pillow forts and putting Lego sets together or now I'm old, so I'm going to say Meccano sets. You probably everyone knows Meccano, right? Sonya knows what Meccano sets are.
Oh,
If
wait,
she's my age group,
is
Sonya.
that your Lincoln Logs, right?
Yeah.
And your
So
Connect Fours. I get it.
that's
Listen.
great.
Yeah.
So we all started with that, and I think you hit the nail on the head when people they discount what impact we all has an entire ecosystem. Because I mean, you think about it, we're researching the concrete that they did in Rome during the Roman Empire and going, how is it self-healing?
Mhm.
And they had figured this out a long time ago, and maybe by fluke, right? We don't know that, but we leave lasting impressions that redefine what the future is going to look at. Yeah,
Absolutely.
so we have a lasting impression, and I've always said it that everybody on a job site is an artist with a different brush in their hand because they all leave a piece of them behind on a job site. By the bricklayer leaves a brick, right? The drywaller leaves mud on the wall so that we can paint it. So we all leave a piece of us behind.
I think that's a great segue really into the next question that I wanted to ask is all about that leaving a piece behind because we leave more than just sort of a
100%.
piece of like there it goes deeper than that. And I think Fred that's what kind of led you to the next piece of the BUNM and having an opportunity to share? You mentioned or highlighted a little bit that there was a behind the scenes struggle there. So what kind of got you to the point of being using the BUNM as a platform, not just to highlight construction, but to highlight your mental health journey?
Yeah, and I think this is true of many people in today's day and age where there is a bit of a gulf between what you see of someone online, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and the realities of what that life is actually like for someone. And we never actually really know what people are going through or what they're really dealing with. And for all the successes, for all the great stuff you see online, for all the stuff I've just described to you on this podcast, behind the scenes, I was somebody that really struggled with my mental health and in particular with depression. And that will sound strange because if you looked at my life on paper, it just wouldn't make sense. And I remember looking at myself in the bathroom mirror, asking myself what was wrong with me because I had two great kids. Well, I have two great kids. I have an amazing wife. I have a great house. I have a thriving business. I have my physical health. I would just shake myself and be like, come on, there are so many people in the world who have so much less than you. What's the matter with you? And I came to realize in that moment that depression isn't a conscious, it's not a conscious choice. You don't wake up one morning and feel like I'm going to be down.
You don't
Um,
sign up.
no. So people saying to me, cheer up a bit or you're just tired was,
Out
re-
of it.
was really, yeah, really frustrating. And I wanted more than anything to flick a switch and change. I remember friends and family almost withdrawing from me a bit because I wasn't as fun to be around anymore. And that was hard because I didn't want them to withdraw from me. I wanted them to help me. So looking for that switch to just turn it all off and go back to who I was hard. I was also suffering with some chronic pain at the time, which I think again was linked on to my mental condition. And it was kind of this vicious cycle where the chronic pain meant I couldn't do as much exercise as I wanted, which then made the depression kind of gave more ammunition to the depression in a way. Yeah, exactly. I looked at in going through that. I sought counseling. I got counseling. I started talking more about what I was going through, and that hugely
Yeah.
helped. It helped massively. I actually did that in secret, first of all, because I was so ashamed of having to do it. I was embarrassed about having to do it. I felt like I was a failure by having to go and get counseling. And it took me a long time to talk about it publicly. But when I did talk about it publicly, the reaction I got was incredible. The support I got was incredible. And I realized that actually this persona I was trying to perfect of being strong and formidable and unflappable all the time wasn't necessary. It wasn't going to hinder my success. Um, so yeah, in going through what I went through and then in seeing what had happened in the construction sector or what was happening in the construction sector, I wanted to use that platform I built, that huge, 4 million subscriber YouTube channel to reach out and further raise awareness and try and do something about this in the industry I love. Teamed up with Procore and created Get Construction Talking, which is a global initiative all about driving action and raising awareness around mental health in the industry that I love. We didn't want to double up on what was already being done. I didn't want to start a new helpline or new charities. I wanted to do what I was good at, which was raising awareness and reaching people, and use that to help lift up the fantastic charities all around in this space all around the world who are doing such a good job. Charities like the CIASP. And yeah, it's been fantastic. I'm incredibly proud that I've now raised, well, collectively, we've now raised over $800,000 for construction's mental health charities worldwide, which is obviously not enough. We've got a long way to go, but it does make a difference.
It is making a difference. So, Zulq, do you want to tell Fred about the numbers? I don't know if you've seen them yet, Fred, year over year, 23 to 24.
You're gonna make me quote numbers that I'm gonna forget on, but
But just
I
just tell
I
him the news, I'll tell him the numbers.
you know what? Listen, I'm super happy to share that there's a downward trend in suicide in construction, which is where we all want to get to zero. That's utopia, but there's a downward trend, which means that all of this that we're all doing is going in the right direction. And substance abuse and drug overdoses are down. I mean, it's a larger
Significantly.
trend.
Yes, much bigger.
Which so, on behalf of everyone in the construction ecosystem, first of all, Fred, thank you for sharing your story. I'm not going to give us the ageism thing, but you're helping bridge the divide between some of us that are a little older that were raised in an environment where it was a suck it up buttercup. You're not allowed to talk about this. So now we're starting to talk about it, but we're getting courage from people in your generation that want to talk about it. And I just, only good things are going to happen. And you know what? Next year, I can't wait till the stats come out. I want to see that trend slide down, but it's not going to happen unless people are openly admitting that we have a challenge, right? It's no longer just about the pillow fort we were playing when we were having fun. We have all these other pressures, right? There's so many things that are happening in our world that on the surface, yes, we all look like, what is it? The smiling clown, but inside we're hurt, right?
Yeah. I think what was really interesting is that as I was going through what I went through, I talked to some of my mentors and people I trusted who were from a slightly older generation. And the feedback I got was, don't tell anyone about this. Put on a brave face
Yes.
and keep
Don't talk
going.
about this.
Because if
Mhm.
you talk about it, it will show that you're weak and people will doubt you, and then your staff will doubt you, and your customers might doubt you. And I remember that huge conflict I had between the advice I was getting from people who'd always been older than me and who I thought were more experienced and more responsible, and what I was actually feeling I should be doing. I kind of got to the place where I don't mind saying I was at rock bottom. I didn't want to die by suicide, but I also wasn't really enjoying my life either. But what I realized is that rock bottom's actually quite a good surface to build off. And it helped me reorder what actually matters in life. And I got to that point where I was like, I don't really care anymore. I'm not going to fret about being strong all the time. I'm just going to say how I feel in the hope that I can help other people. And I did. And I think I'm now a much more resilient person. I know myself better. Other people know me better. And I think I've proven to at least myself, if not other people in the industry, that you can open up and be vulnerable, but still be a formidable and successful person. I'm just human.
Thank you. You are human, and I think that's what makes you a better, stronger person is when you can admit it, right?
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
grow from accepting your brilliance. You grow from finding where you heal them, you patch them, you fix them, and you get to be stronger,
Oh my,
right?
Zoc, how profound.
I listen. The conversation this morning was about the general malaise in society that we're experiencing that's compounded by the influence of social media, the geopolitical challenges that we're all having, and all of this is filtering into the workplace.
It
Like,
is.
nobody wants to talk about politics, but honestly, it's weighing on everybody. It was how many people at our board meeting brought it up saying, "Hey, I'm worried about what the future looks like for my kid based on what's happening." And, we talk about above and below because it's Canada, US, but this is beside, right? Like, he's on the other side of the pond, right? It's a big pond, and so it's up a little beside you. We're gonna rename the podcast for today.
Above, below, and beside. I like
And
it.
yeah, so, hey, we can have a regular series around it, but the
Yeah.
reality is that when we look at and we've coined a term recently, Fred, and I'm taking credit for it, but it's existed. They're construction warriors. These are guys that go to battle every day, dealing with adverse temperatures and weather conditions, rain or snow or heat. It's not a manufacturing environment where everything is in the right place and the robot comes and delivers it to you. There's tension, there's anxiety, there's all this pressure. We even recently talked about at our board meeting, say that, the pressure that's exerted from an ownership level. So I'm hoping all these owners that are listening today, you're contributing to the challenges that we're having on the job site because somebody in their wisdom thought that we're going to have a schedule that's going to last 12 months. And it took us 4 years to design the building and 3 years to raise the financing, and you're like, "Oh, so you're gonna finish in a year." So you're gonna put that pressure on the workers where it's not realistic. So we have all these things that are happening in our ecosystem, but yet we're not allowed to talk about it. So thank you, Fred, for speaking up about it and reminding this generation that we should be talking more about it because we all have our struggles. Sonia, we've talked about it.
We have. We've talked about it a lot. And like that actually brings me to my next question because on a job site or in construction, it would be very normal for me to shed a tear or to be vulnerable as a woman. It's accepted and almost expected, right? But it's not as expected or even, allowed, I will say, from a male perspective. So how do you balance that vulnerability and those boundaries around what that looks like and how you show up for yourselves, for the people you love, and for the people that you work with?
Yeah, it's a really important question. I think vulnerability without boundaries just becomes oversharing and it can go too far. And I remember the first time I talked about this publicly, I did it as part of a keynote speech at a construction conference to about 4,000 people in person, which I would not recommend to anyone listening. It was not a good way to do it. I remember being quite stressed about wanting to make what I said coherent. It had to make sense. It had to have a logic to it because it had to be followable for people in the audience. And I quickly realized that mental health doesn't work like that. And it's actually a lot more effective if I just say how I'm feeling, why I'm feeling it, and what I'm doing to get through it. And that for me was helpful because it not just helpful for myself, but I knew it would be constructive and helpful for those people listening. I think sometimes talking too despairingly can be unhelpful. I've seen people talk in quite considerable detail about the actual act of dying by suicide, which I think is incredibly unhelpful because it only
Incredibly
unrates awareness
and
for other people.
unsafe, frankly.
Yeah, so I
Mhm.
don't. Yeah, there is always sort of red lines for me. But I think talking about what I've been through so that it's real and credible and relatable for people is important. But then pairing that with how I'm now feeling and what I'm doing to get out of it is for me where that balance is. What I've found consistently, it doesn't matter what rooms I go into, from Chicago to London to Sydney, Australia. If I share my story about my mental health journey and how I felt about mental health in construction, it will resonate with somebody else in the room because we're all human beings and we all feel things the same way. And it's incredible how that can cut through no matter where you are, no matter what constant you're on. It always just has that effect for people. So for me, I think it's all about, yeah, making sure you get that constructive balance while also being relatable and being real.
Having a
Yeah,
little bit of hope, it sounds like too. Like if you leave them with, here's where I was, but here's where I am now. Right.
Yeah,
yeah. It's
absolutely.
about leaving little nuggets behind, right? And Fred, I think people are starting to relate to genuine and Hollywood. Like, I mean, we're using Hollywood as a very generic term, but the Hollywood scripted scenarios, people aren't looking for that anymore. I get in trouble all the time from Sonya. She's going to say, "Cut that out. We can't say that." But the I'm telling you, she's just a whole blooper reel of everything I've said that's been cut out. But the reality is, people resonate with humans, and humans are not perfect,
And we've
right?
we've learned that from our media business as well. So, the last few years, there's been a
It's changed.
proliferation in online content and a lot of AI as well. You can get AI to write articles, produce YouTube videos that are not very good, to be honest. What we find really works for us is, again, people are distrusting mainstream media because they're not sure who's writing it or what the bias is. But individual creators, influencers that have that identity, that build that genuine conviction, that authority on the area is much more relatable to people. I'm sure all have people that we would know, trust, and listen to online over other sources because we feel like they're authentic. And I think that authenticity is something we want from our politicians, what we want from our YouTube creators, but also I think what we want from our teams and our leaders at work as well. And I may be jumping ahead here, but my big word for 2026 is authenticity.
I love that.
You
That is
jumped
something
ahead.
that it's something we talk about all the time, what our words of the year are, and we can share them, certainly, but if you listen to our podcast on a regular basis, we each had words for 2025. Zulq kept his for 2026. I changed mine a little bit.
Uh,
It's
I'm
important to have that
tried and tested. I'm old. I don't play Word with Friends like Sonya does, so I don't have experience.
sharp.
No, you brought up a very valid point about authenticity, Fred, and the genuineness. And one of the things that people sometimes lose sight of is that in the entire, and I want to say, when we look at our entire construction ecosystem, we've got all kinds of different people that are playing in this space. You had an opportunity, you worked in the design community and the engineering side, and then you got to the field, and they're not the same personas that are going across all of these spectrums. And we have to be relatable at all levels and communicable at all levels. And sometimes we have to, and it's very hard in a management position because you're putting on different hats. Like every 3 minutes, you're flipping a hat because now you're talking to the owner of a company. You can't drop the F bomb. But if you go to a job site and you talk like you're talking to the owner of a company, they're not listening to you. They want to hear the F bomb, right?
Sometimes.
So we have to constantly pivot. But what over time is going to happen is if we can be our genuine selves, we can actually start talking about what's ailing Fred and what's ailing Zolk and what's ailing Sonya if there's anything that ails Sonya. But we all have stuff that's going on in our world. But if we have this masquerade facade on us, it's not going to work. And that's what the industry's been for the last, listen, I've been around it for 30 years, right? That's what the industry's been traditionally. But the last 5 to 7 years, we're now giving it a new face and a shape. And Fred, what you guys are doing is giving it the next generation a better chance to be a healthier place, right?
Thank you.
Yeah. So
So do you still think that, or do you think that we are still getting it wrong? Like, what's the gap? Like, what do we need to do to really start making a difference in this conversation in construction?
So I think there is an important shift happening from awareness to action. I think we need to get out of talking and getting to taking real action around this issue, which I'm pleased to see happening right across the industry, as I said, in different geographic markets as well, and at all different levels, which is great. For me, I think going to Zulk's point just there, the big thing is noticing when the people around you, the people closest to you, aren't quite themselves. And it takes someone who knows you well to notice it. I remember I would get out of bed in the morning and I had to be a strong husband, strong dad. I would go to work and have to be strong employer, visionary leader, set the tone for the company for the day. And then if I was meeting someone else, I would invariably be meeting a customer or a potential customer or someone who was excited to meet me for the first time. Again, I just always had this front that I had to put on. And it was only my family, the people very close to me, who said, "Are you okay? Because you seem to hug me slightly tighter when you said goodbye the other day. You haven't seemed yourself. Like you seemed more withdrawn at our Sunday lunch recently." And it's
Mhm.
that that gave me the opportunity to start talking. So for me, I think it's really important to have mental health first aiders, to have professionals and leaders talking about this in organizations, to have it embedded in our health and safety plans. But ultimately, awareness is so important because if we can all become aware of what the typical signs are to look for and to bear this in mind when we're working with our colleagues on a busy job site so that we know the person you come in with every day, the person you walk to lunch with, the person you go to a bar with after work, you're more likely to pick up the sign that something's wrong with them than any mental health first aider or a new job foreman they've just met that morning. So I think just like physical health and safety on construction sites, where we all have this real collective responsibility now, we need to get to the same level of collective responsibility with mental health in construction.
well said. I mean, the reality is it starts with conversations, recognizing that each of us are just humans and having those individual personal conversations that'll lay the foundation for communication. They're going to happen. Unfortunately, I'm around people that think that this is a bit of a fad, and I want to make it very abundantly clear for anyone that's listening today and all those naysayers out there. This is not a fad, right? This is not the new thing in construction because, we're changing our minds on it. This is a real thing that we're now actively looking at. And some people say, well, we're only looking at it for business reasons. Well, yes, there's always business reasons, but we're also looking at it from a human reason where we're saying, hey, we no longer treat humans the way we did 50 years ago. We're not going back to 2000 years ago where it was okay to have slaves. So if that's not happening, why aren't we evolving the conversation? Right. And mental health comes first because mental health, I know you're going to say cut it out, but it's a
Yeah,
reality,
but keep
right?
going.
The Colosseum was built in 4 years, if you can believe that, right? Yeah, sure. Give me 3 million slaves. I'll build it in 4 years too. But the reality, Fred's going, yeah, it's probably about right. Right. But, but, the reality is that, instinctively we're now taking this forward. Mental health is the leading cause for accidents on a job site. So if we want to reduce accidents on a job site that are trivial, you got to fix the cause of it. And mental health is the starting cause of it, right? Not recognizing I need to be safe. There's a little bit of a problem there.
So let's dig into that though, because again, it goes back to what we talked about earlier in that vulnerability. How do you get these conversations going? Because we say you start with, hey man, are you okay? But you're going to get I'm fine, everything's fine. But you got to get that deeper piece of it. So from someone who tends to put their guard up, and I'm looking at you,
And
how
you're
do
pointing straightforward. That could be him.
putting at you. So how do you break down those walls in the conversation? Because if I'm having that conversation, I'm saying, I know you're not fine. Then the flip side of that is then we become nagging or, digging too deeply into your personal business and all of those things. Where's the boundary, but where's also the place where you get to the meat of what's bothering someone? How do you have the conversation?
Since you're pointing at me, I'll make it pretty clear. So I had my own
Okay.
mental health struggles. I've been fortunate where I've been surrounded by some really awesome people in my world that are my friends. And that's because we chose to be each other's friends when it was really sucky, right? And we've always committed to being there for each other. But you don't wake up and be your friend. So yes, I know that I can be abrasive at certain times because I'm not looking for new friends. But anyone that takes the time to get to know me will realize only genuinely if something's wrong, he'll show up. I will show up for you. You don't have to be my friend for me to show up for you. But I'm blessed because I have this I have a plethora of friends that I know if something's wrong today, I can just call one of them. They're all going to arrive. But on a job site, not everyone's your friends, they're colleagues. But listen, if you're brushing elbows with them and you're sharing shit, you guys have the same bathroom. It's a porta Johnny, right? You guys are neighbors. You should be neighborly and be friendly and get to know them. Like, hey, Fred, how are you? Right? Find out if Fred has a kid or two. That's a starting point of getting to know them on a human level, right? If we just take that extra second to just be familiar with one person on the job site, it'll become rampant and it'll spread, right? So, Sonya, you gotten to know me over the last year and a half, roughly. You know certain things about me that none of the other board members know, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because you showed up for me and I've shown up for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that translates because we spend a lot of time working together, obviously. But I think that we've both agreed to let our guards down in many cases. But again, I think, Fred, maybe you can talk to this too a little bit. Like, how do you get to that point on a job site, especially in an ecosystem that's been taught that that's not how you act? Because when you act that way, you are other sort of stereotypes that people in this industry don't want to have labeled.
You don't want me to use the words? Okay, I won't use the
No,
words.
and I don't. So please don't, because I don't want to have to cut that much out. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's not easy. I think the points I've made about people being aware of these issues and feeling able to ask the questions to their mates and colleagues are important. But what we need to do more generally is create that wider environment where we have humanized our workforce and where people feel is their joint responsibility to look out for and care for people's mental health and that it will be
100%.
taken seriously when it's raised. I think, Zulq made a really good point a moment ago about the kind of the business side of this, and maybe people listening that maybe don't see this as an issue or think that mental health is something we should be seen to be doing as a company. We should definitely have a statement on the website somewhere. We should put out a really nice tweet on World Mental Health Day. It's deeper than that. In the current market where we are fighting for a lack of skilled labor in construction, where we are trying to attract and retain the best people, where we are trying to work with non-existent profit margins to build ever better buildings more efficiently to a higher quality, we need the best people retained and firing on all cylinders in our business. I know that I only run a small business in comparison to many construction companies. I employ 16 people. But I know that if everyone's in a bad mood and stressed and overworked and not enjoying the working environment, things like my budget, my profitability target, my timelines are all going to go out the window because I'm not getting the best out of my people. So I think there is a business case to this as well as a
Mhm.
human case that is quite compelling for organizations. I think, as I said a moment ago, where we need to get to is making this as instinctive to people as it is physical health and safety. I don't know about you, but I couldn't walk through the gates of a construction site now in jeans, trainers, and a t-shirt. I feel like I would feel compelled to put
Mhm.
on boots, hard hat,
PPE.
high
Yeah.
vis. Yeah, I couldn't go further. I couldn't do it. I'd be shocked if I was to do that. We need to get to the same place where with mental health, people are saying, well, hang on a moment. What do you mean you're working 15-hour days, 5 days a week, 6 days a week? What do you mean the crane driver's not had a day off in 10 days and is driving 3 hours to get here and is then operating a massive piece of machinery? This is madness, guys. What are we doing? So I think getting to that same place is really important. I think another really good point that I do want to make is this notion that somehow people in construction are all struggling with their mental health. That's not the case at all. We have amazing people in this industry. The people that Zulq described earlier are incredible. They get up every day and shape our world. They make the impossible happen. What we've done is put those amazing people in a set of circumstances where it's little wonder that their mental health under pressure. We've put them under time deadlines, cost deadlines, made them travel to crazy locations and got them to build a prototype building every time for a set of very unforgiving clients that are standing over them with the contracts. So when I describe it like that, it sounds a bit of the whole thing sounds madness in a way, but I think it kind of,
It is. It is. No, it
yeah,
is. You actually painted the picture of what the reality is. There's this person who wants a project that's completely disconnected from how it actually gets built. There's someone in between that sold them a lie about a budget and the schedule. So let's take the budget out of the equation, right? Because that's money. But somebody gave them a lie about a schedule. I always say baseline schedule is the greatest lie ever told on a project, right? Because the first RFI goes out, the schedule's out to date. But it's predicated on these lies of we're not going to interact with the humans that are actually going to build it. I've seen that struggle one too many times. I've seen clients, well, you can get this done in a week. I'm like, you can't pick a color for a month and you want me to finish in a week. Yeah, sure, no problem. We're going to get I've heard. My favorite was, "Can we have dust-free construction?" I'm like, "Shit, yeah, absolutely. We're just not going to build anything. It's going to be dust-free, though, right? We'll all show up here. We're going to have our lunches together. We're going to go home. No dust, guarantee you." So we have some really absurd expectations that are filtering from different layers and medium, and it's filtering down to it. And then they wonder why we have a shortage of workers in construction, right? There's not a shortage of workers because people don't like construction. Every little person, and I'm gonna say person here because boys and girls are now doing this. They all like building stuff when they're at certain ages. They all do. My daughter liked to have a pillow fort. My daughter has made the tents. I have to cover up the sofa and enclose the TV so that she can have this little surround sound experience in her little fort, right? We take that out of them because we say, yeah, you really don't want to end up in that industry because it sucks out there, right? So we take it out of them bit by bit. And then when they get into the workforce, we wonder why they don't want to work there because the environment is hostile. The expectations are ridiculous. The pay is good. But that's the only, depending on where you are, I can't say this for my friends in the South, but come to Toronto, you see what you get paid as a laborer. It's awesome, right? The pay is good. The environment sucks, right? But then we can't even talk to each other. We can't be humans with each other. And then we're expected to take all the life's pressures and make them all disappear because we're supposed to be there to work, right? So yeah, we have a problem. And it's a stratosphere of problems, which I know that we're talking about it at this level with the workers. The employers have to understand that you need to start pushing back to the owners. You need to push back to the design community that's listening. Let's set realistic expectations because you're all contributing to a bigger problem. The last thing I want to kind of mention out here, Fred, and people don't understand this. Workers are a commodity. AI is not going to replace workers on a job site. I don't care what anyone thinks. Humanoids are not about to do it, right? Humanoids might assist, but they're not going to replace construction workers. So this gap in the United States, which is 500,000, do not think your structural steel or your drywall is a commodity. Your workers are your commodity, and you need to treat them with respect and dignity, because if they disappear, you're SOL. Sorry, is that shit out of luck? Sorry, Sonya. Okay, I wanted to say it. I had to say it, but you can cut it out later. But that's the reality. We need to respect the people that are part of this whole ecosystem.
Absolutely. That's a great point. So as we are nearing time, and I just want to ask one question, and that is, Fred, if you were to have an opportunity to talk to your former self, I don't want to say younger self, but the one that was about to share their struggles and this journey, what would you tell that person today?
yeah, that's a really good question. I look back at that time now and I see myself struggling, feeling low, not understanding why and wanting to solve it. And I now realize that I was battling with depression, but didn't know I was battling with depression, which is hard and quite obsessing because they're years that you can't get back in a way. And I lived them in a different time. For me, I would say, chill out, Fred. Stop worrying about what everyone thinks about you. Recognize that your life is happening today, not in the future, and live every moment more positively.
Love it.
That is great advice. I love that. So we talked a few minutes ago about your word of the year. Tell us what it is again.
Well, honestly, when I open the news at the moment, I could think of lots of words for this year, which are not appropriate to start on the podcast.
On my podcast, are completely appropriate. You come to ours, you can say whatever you
we
want.
all, we all open the news and reach for an exclusive, to be honest. But for me, the professional answer to this is authenticity. And I really do believe that. I think for too long, we've all pretended to be other people or put on fronts or try to project ourselves in a certain way. And I think in today's day and age, where everything is, we're overwhelmed with information coming in. There's AI generating content at a frightening pace. I think people want real, genuine, authentic people with a sense of conviction and passion behind what they do. And if you have that, people will know you better, they'll understand you better, you'll have better mental health. And I think the world generally would be a better place.
Thank you. Zulq, you want to end with your word of the year?
Yes, my word of the year, it's going to go on for a few more years. Sorry. I know you want me to change something, but it's not
I
going to
don't.
happen. My word's gratefulness. I'm grateful, Fred. Well, I'm grateful we're having these conversations, that people are actually being their authentic and genuine selves, because it allows for all of us to be in a better place. We all had journeys. My journey was to become a dad. It broke me down to my deep moment where it was like, it was dark, it was cloudy, it was stormy. I didn't know how to get out of it, but I was grateful that I had the best friends on the planet that rescued me, right?
Right.
And my wife was capable of saying, "Hey, he needs help today." And they didn't know how to help me. They were like, he's the guy who helps us." But I'm just grateful. I live gratefulness. I wake up and I'm grateful.
So my word is catalyst. And the reason for that is that we are on the cusp of so much change and so many great, amazing things in this industry. And if I can keep pushing that forward, that's what I feel like I am meant to do. So from Zulq and I, and we are grateful that you are so authentic and are doing so many great things to create real change in this industry. So thanks for being with us today.
So likewise, the work of CISP is incredible and the impact you guys are having is immense. And for as long as you keep going, I will be right beside you helping you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fred. Look
Thanks,
forward to staying in
everyone.
touch.